بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على عبده ورسوله وخليله وصفوته من خلقه نبينا وإمامنا وسيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن سلك سبيله واهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. We're on the author's statement وَالْفَاحِشُ مِنْ غَيْرِهِمَا. Previously, we spoke for several weeks on the nullifiers of wudu. And we said the author said they were 8. وَالنَّوَاقِدُ فِي الطَّهَارَةِ الصُّغْرَى ثَمَانِيَةٌ الْخَارِجُ مِنَ السَّبِيلَيْنِ. He said there's 8 nullifiers of wudu. The first one he mentioned is al-khariju min as-sabilain, anything exiting from the 2 private parts. We spoke about that for several weeks. We gave examples in matters that fall under that. The second nullifier of wudu, according to the author, is وَالْفَاحِشُ مِنْ غَيْرِهِمَا, and that's where we'll start off today, inshallah. What exits from other than the 2 private parts, that's repulsive. وَالْفَاحِشُ مِنْ غَيْرِهِمَا. And there's 2 masail under the statement. 2 very important masail under this statement. The first one is the discharge of feces in urine from other than the private parts. What we've been discussing before is the discharge of feces in urine from the private parts. Now, it's the discharge of feces in urine, najasa, clear, ijma' najasa, from other than the private parts. And this is a very common mas'ala, more common than people think or know. Many people have birth defects or endure medical procedures like ostomy, which is a surgical procedure in which they make a hole to allow the stool and urine to leave the body through the belly. That's when they put a pouch on the side. They basically make a new exit route for the urine and feces. The exact spot where they make the hole usually depends on why they're doing the surgery. And it's very common, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you and guard you from something like that. It could be from cancer or medical conditions, or sometimes it's people are born like that with the medical issues. Sometimes it's permanent, sometimes it's not. The first opinion on matters like that is what Hanafiya and Hanabila mentioned, that it nullifies the wudu. They didn't place any restrictions, meaning they didn't restrict whether the hole is above the stomach, the belly area, or below it, or if the private parts are sealed or not, or if it's temporary or not, as you're going to see in the second opinion. This rajih opinion says that the discharge of feces and urine from anywhere nullifies the wudu. They use the verse, first of all. أَوْ جَاءَ أَحَدٌ مِّنْكُمْ مِنَ الْغَائِطِ. If any one of you defecates, if any one of you discharge stool, which is in the context of the nullifiers of wudu in the verse, in the Quran. They use that verse. They also use the hadith that we mentioned several times for several issues, mainly for the khuf. Hadith in Sunan al-Nasa'i and al-Tirmidhi, hadith Safwan ibn Assal radiyallahu anh, where he said they were with the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam on a journey, and Safwan said, he told us not to take our khuf off for 3 days except in the case of janaba, not from defecation, urinating, or sleeping. How and in what context do they use that ayah in the hadith to prove that feces and urine discharged from the body from other than the private parts also nullifies the wudu? They said, and pay attention, they said, أَوْ جَاءَ أَحَدٌ مِّنْكُمْ مِنَ الْغَائِطِ. If one of you defecates. The hadith Safwan, defecation and urinating. They said the ayah in the hadith, the terminology in them, consider the discharge itself, not where it's discharged from. And as it pertains to urine, they tagged it along with discharge of feces by analogy, by qiyas. So they said, additionally to that, they said the discharge of urine and feces from other than the private parts is similar to the discharge from the private parts in every way, so there's no meaning in distinguishing between the two. The second opinion is the opinion of the Malikiya and the correct opinion selected within the Shafi'iyya madhab. And it's somewhat detailed. This should be written down and you need to focus while you're writing. They said if the regular private parts are not sealed, they're functioning, then whatever is discharged of feces and urine doesn't nullify the wudu. What about if the private parts are sealed for some medical reason? They said if it's sealed, the private parts are sealed, if the exit of the urine or feces, the hole they make, is above the stomach belly area, it doesn't nullify the wudu. If it's under the belly stomach area, it nullifies the wudu. And they said that that's only when it's temporary. If it's a temporary type of illness, that applies. What if it's a permanent medical issue? Someone born like that, or they're going to live like that for the rest of their life. They said if it's permanent, the discharge of stool and urine voids wudu, whether it's above or below the stomach. The hole, meaning, whether it's above or below the belly area. The reason they made the distinction pertaining to the exit hole being above or below the stomach, if it's temporary, they compared the opening under the stomach to waste exiting from the private parts, and they gave it that ruling, that it nullifies the wudu. When the opening is above the belly area, they compared it to vomiting and burping, and they gave it that ruling, which doesn't nullify the wudu. And the rajih, like we said, is the first opinion. The second mas'ala, somewhat more complex, is the ruling on what exits or is discharged from other than the private parts like blood and vomit. And the reason we didn't include that in the first mas'ala is because we mentioned in the first mas'ala what's by ijma' najis. Blood and vomit being najis or not is disputed, and this is not the section right now to talk about the mas'ala in full detail. That's usually placed by fuqaha under najasat, the section of najasat. What we're concerned about here is, does it nullify the wudu? Someone vomited. Someone had a nosebleed. Someone was wounded or had a burn, and there's a discharge of pus from that wound. The first opinion by Hanafiya and Hanabila is that it voids wudu. Hanabila require wudu from vomit or blood, for example, if it's a big amount, they said, a fahish amount. What's that fahish amount? That large amount? They, within the madhab, disputed what that fahish amount is. Al-Khallal in Al-Insaf said it's what an average, normal individual judges for himself to be a nullifier of wudu. The person, sane person, without waswasa, judges that this amount nullifies the wudu. Some went to urf to define it. Some said it's a handspan by a handspan. Some said for qayt, for example, they went to lisan al-Arab. What's qayt? What's vomiting? And it's what's a mouthful or more, they said. Some said it's a dirham baghli, which is a term, a measure used by ulama to determine a small amount of najasa, and our Shaykh Atiyya rahimahullah ta'ala said it's the equivalent of the silver riyal that was made during King Abdul Aziz's time, which he said is a little bit less than 4 centimeters. All that is ijtihad. Generally, in matters like this, pertaining to matters like that, or matters of distance or measure, you first go to the proof to find the amount. If it's not in the proof, the textual proof, you go to something like lisan al-Arab to define it linguistically. If it's not there, you go to urf. many of the Hanabila, for example, pertaining to blood, many of them, to see what constitutes najasa of blood, they went to urf. For qay, vomiting, many of them went to lisan al-Arab and determined it by that. That's the opinion requiring wudu from vomit or bleeding. What's their proof? First of all, they used hadith Fatima bint Abi Hubaysh. We went over it many times, radiallahu anha. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered her to do salah while she was on istihada. And he said, it's blood from a vein. They said that it's blood discharged from the body requiring wudu. So all blood discharged from the body requires wudu, because the Prophet ﷺ said it's blood from a vein. And we responded to that earlier on in detail. We said the ending of the hadith requiring wudu in the hadith is the statement of Urwa radiallahu anhu. Secondly, when the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said إِنَّمَا ذَلِكَ عِرْقٌ, blood from a vein, it was not a response to wudu being obligated, it was to show that salah is obligated. She asked about salah, he said إِنَّمَا ذَلِكَ عِرْقٌ. It's response to the requirement of salah, not the requirement of wudu. Third of all, we said the issue of blood being najis or not is disputed. And in summary, the correct opinion is blood is not najis. So if it's established it's not najis, you can't require one to do wudu from what's not najis. Now if it's tahir, if it's not najis, then it's tahir. And that's the correct opinion. It takes the ruling of something like sweat and spitting. That's discharged from the body. The second proof they use is hadith in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, hadith Abi Darda, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قاء فأفطر فتوضأ. That the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم vomited, broke his fast, and then performed wudu. قاء فأفطر فتوضأ. They said the wudu was because of the vomiting. And here, first of all, there's issues within the authenticity of that hadith. It's a weak hadith. That's all that needs to be said pertaining to the hadith. But since it's widely used on this matter as proof, we'll elaborate more. And we can take lessons from the responses pertaining to that. Let's say, even if it's not authentic, but even if it was authentic, it doesn't require wudu from vomiting. Wudu was from the action of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the hadith, not an order. And that doesn't make matters wajib. He performed wudu, he did an order sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as he did in other matters. Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam performed tayammum before responding to someone who offered him salam. Yet no one considers it a wajib to make wudu or do tayammum before responding to someone who gives you salam. So the mere act of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam alone, performing wudu by itself, even if the hadith was authentic, is not an indication that wudu from vomiting is a wajib. And this also, I'll reiterate, is based on the fact that blood and vomiting is najis, as they say. And that's a disputed issue, and the correct opinion is it's not even najis. And also, the hadith shows that he vomited, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then made iftar. He broke his fast and then made wudu. Vomiting doesn't break the fast, in the correct opinion, unless it's intentional. Here it's qa'a, meaning qa'a, which means he didn't intentionally do it. Had it been istaqa'a, it would mean he purposely vomited. The point being, it was not intentional. So vomiting unintentionally doesn't break the fast. Yet in the hadith it says he broke the fast, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we can say that the same way it didn't break the fast, yet he broke the fast. He went and made wudu when it doesn't really nullify the wudu, when the vomiting doesn't really nullify the wudu. Also, wudu in this matter could have been due to cleanliness, not nullifying the wudu, to freshen up, to clean the mouth and face and nose or the clothes. So you can't declare a nullifier based on that. So the first hadith is hadith Fatima bint Abi Hubaysh. The second one is this weak hadith. Third is several athar, statements by Sahaba or their actions. like matters where they made wudu from nose bleeding or vomiting or ordered it. And the most sound one is that's related in Muwatta Malik, that Nafi' said Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma would leave and do wudu when he had a nosebleed and then return to his salah and complete it from where he left off without saying anything. Another one that's attributed to Ali radiallahu anh in Ad-Daraqutni, that he said, if one of you vomits or has a nosebleed, let him go make wudu and then return and complete from where he left off without speaking. The response to that is, some ulama said that what they did was they went to wash off the blood and then come back and continue the salah. It's wudu, not the ibadah wudu, but wudu taken linguistically from wada'a, which is cleanliness. They went to clean themselves. And they said, since it can accept both opinions, both interpretation, the ibadah wudu or the cleanliness interpretation, then it can be used as proof. But the more correct view is that when wudu is mentioned broadly, just like that, it's the shar'i wudu, the shar'i ibadah wudu. Sometimes there may be proof to indicate it's something else. And we'll respond to those athar in a minute, inshallah. Because the next opinion also has athar to back their opinion as well. The fourth proof is qiyas. They said the najis that exits from the private parts is a nullifier of wudu. So what exits of najasa from other than the private parts nullifies the wudu as well. So they looked at what's discharged regardless of where it's discharged from. The response is, you cannot do qiyas on what is discharged from the body on that which is discharged from the body parts, from the private parts. Why? Because we said passing of wind from the rectum nullifies wudu by ijma'. If you do qiyas on that, you're going to end up saying burping voids wudu. However, burping, which is passing wind from the mouth, doesn't invalidate wudu by ijma'. That shows qiyas on what exits the private parts is not a strong qiyas. Also, the najasa of vomit and blood is not established. Even though vomit is considered najis by the majority of the ulama, Ash-Shawkani and others correctly said it's not najis because there's no proof to prove it's najasa. Likewise, even though the majority state that blood is najis, Al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala even stated ijma' on it, it's not really najis because there's no proof on it. And there's the hadith in Musnad Ahmad where a sahabi in the battle of Ghazwat Dhat al-Riqa' was hit with arrows and he took them out and continued in his salah, and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew about it and didn't object. And also like the hadith of Umar radiallahu anh, where he made salah while bleeding. More importantly, there's no hadith indicating clear, authentic hadith indicating that blood is najis when it's a common, widespread matter. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have informed us about it, and if he informed us about it, it would have reached us. And like I said, it's not the topic here to discuss the najasa of blood and vomit. Otherwise, I would discuss it in detail like I like to do. But it's not the timing of it as the book is organized in a certain way. Second opinion in the Rajih is the opinion of Malikiyya, Shafi'iyya, and it's what Ibn Taymiyyah and Al-Zahiriyya chose. And it's one of the two opinions of Hanabila, is that vomit and blood that's discharged from other than the private parts doesn't nullify the wudu. The strongest proof on that is that there's no proof to prove that it's a nullifier of wudu. The origin in matters like this is they don't void the wudu. In order to allege they void the wudu, you need clear, authentic proof from the Quran or Sunnah or Ijma' that require wudu from such matters. A person's tahara has been established and it continues on. In order to allege it's nullified for any reason, bring us the proof. It's by ijma'. The one who made wudu is a tahir, is on tahara. He's pure. They dispute that tahara based on nose bleeding or bleeding in general or vomiting or hijama and other matters. It's not correct to void and nullify that tahara that was established by solid, clear proof like ijma', except by an ijma' like it or a verse or hadith from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And just like there was athar indicating that bleeding and vomiting may nullify wudu by the Salaf, there's also some that indicate otherwise. There's an athar by Bakr ibn Abdullah al-Muzani. He said, I saw Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu pop a pimple on his face and some blood came out. He wiped it in between his two fingers and he made salah without going to make wudu. It appears that the athar on this matter, some go with the first opinion, some go with the second opinion, some you can go back and forth with arguments pertaining to them. There's the athar by Abdullah ibn Abi Awfa that he spit blood and made salah without going to make wudu. There's also narrations that Abu Huraira and Jabir radiallahu anhum put their fingers in their noses and bled and made salah without making wudu. Some of these athar are conflicting. Some go with the first opinion, some with the second opinion. And like I said, some may have an explanation, like the athar by Ali radiallahu anhu, that he said, if one of you has a nosebleed or vomits, then he should go make wudu and not speak, and then return and continue in his salah. An athar like that could be explained by saying, if they considered vomit and blood a nullifier of salah, then going back and continuing after you made wudu from where you left off in salah is not sufficient. You have to start all over again. Someone who nullified the salah in the second rak'ah by passing wind has to go make wudu and start all over again. So why does one who vomits or bleeds get to go make wudu and come back and continue where he left off from? As the athar of Ali radiallahu anh says, that's an explanation that may indicate in a way that they didn't actually consider a nullifier. Otherwise, he would have required them to start all over again. The bottom line about the athar is they appear to be conflicting on this matter, or some of them have various interpretation. So we go back to the origin that there's no clear proof on these matters negating wudu. Had the Salaf been in agreement, or we don't know of any dispute, like matters that we took in this fiqh class, where a Sahabi did something and many saw him or knew of it, didn't say anything. But because of the conflicting athar or their interpretation and explanation, we go to the origin that there's no clear proof on this matter negating wudu. The opposing opinion, the Hanabila, the first opinion, where they said you must make wudu, they did have an explanation about some of the athar of the Sahaba that didn't make wudu from bleeding. They said, we said what nullifies wudu has to have two conditions. The first condition is the matter discharged has to be najis, like vomit and blood, and they considered vomit and blood najis. The second we said is that it's fahish. Fahish means a large quantity. And we said early on, they disputed what that large quantity is. They said these athar you're mentioning, where they didn't make wudu, appear to be minor discharges, yasir, which is a small quantity. And we said it's fahish, a larger amount that nullifies the wudu. Like they said, the athar of Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma popping a pimple in blood discharging from it. They said that's extremely minor bleeding and it doesn't invalidate the wudu. And of course, they disputed among themselves what is minor and major in nullifying the wudu of blood and vomit. The rebuttal against them is that blood and vomit are not najis, first of all. Second of all, if what's discharged is najis, as you claim, and it causes a hadath, meaning you have to go make wudu, then you can't differentiate between minor and major discharges. There would be no difference in a little amount or a large quantity. Just like there's no difference in a little or large amount of urine or feces. And then the final proof for the group that doesn't consider vomiting and bleeding a nullifier is some weak ahadith that clearly mention that, but we don't need to mention them because they are weak. The rajih is that blood, vomit, mucus, breath, burping, tearing of the eye, blowing of the nose, spitting, earwax, pus that's discharged from wounds or burns, all that and what's like that, discharged from the body, not from the private parts, does not nullify the wudu, whether it's a large amount or a small amount. Simply put, there's no clear, solid, authentic, direct proof to indicate so. In matters like these, need proof to state that they're nullifiers. Don't confuse the masail we took today with the previous ones. This is discharge from other than the private parts. Last week we took from the private parts. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.